right, well, good morning. If you have your Bibles, you would open to John chapter 3 as we continue in our Advent, remembering the coming Christ to earth. We've talked about the hope that Christ came to bring, the joy that His presence has brought to us when we cling to Him instead of to other things. We talked about, last week we talked about the peace that comes with knowing Christ, the peace that passes all understanding when we are in right relationship with Him, when we are looking to Him for all that we need. We are looking to Him as our hope, looking to Him for all of our joy. There is a peace that comes with that because we know that those hopes, that joy, will not be lost or spent on Him. That the hope that we put in Christ is never going to be disappointed. So long as our hope is truly in Him and not in what we demand that He do for us. The joy that we place in Him can never be lost because that joy is not determined by our circumstances or what our feelings might dictate. It's not ebbing and flowing, but our joy is secure with Him because He is constant, never changing, and fills eternity. So the peace that comes when our hopes are put in Him, when our joy is safe in Him, is a peace that we cannot find in any other way. I don't care how long you send your kids away. You will not have the peace that comes with knowing and living and walking with Christ. Doesn't matter how much time you get away from that one person, or the job, or whatever it is that pulls you from peace. Most often. And now we are to look to the love of Christ. No better place than John chapter 3. Just as you guessed it, verse 19. And this is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. And everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. See, the beauty of the love of Christ is not that He came to love some pretty good people who were making it pretty well and just needed a little help. The beauty of the love of Christ, represented as we celebrated this season, is a love towards those who hated Him, who loved something opposite of Him, other than Him, not Him. See, so much of the love that is, again, perpetuated in commercials and greeting card companies and all these things for this year, the things that we kind of show is that we can experience love like we should have it all year round, but because we work or because we live far from family, we don't experience love, because the love that our culture and society can know is a love that is only reciprocal. That I give to you because you give to me. And so long as that can be maintained, then we can call this love, and I will continue to enter in because it's a safe place for me, it's a comfortable place for me, it's a wonderful place for me. But don't we and our culture also understand that once love is not reciprocated, therefore love must be cut off, right? We cut toxic people out of our lives, even if they're blood family, right? And we make another type of family somewhere else. The beauty of the love that we are to celebrate at Christmas is not the love that has been reciprocal and we're just getting into the flow, but rather a love that was rejected. A love that had no chance of being reciprocated. When Christ found you, he didn't find you trying to find him. He didn't find you trying to love him. He found you loving darkness. You found him when you were afraid to come to him, knowing what he would find in the innermost parts of your heart and soul. We did not come to him. What we celebrate at Christmas is he came to us. We must, as Christians, keep this love before us, because if we don't, we will continue to erroneously conclude that Christ must have found something good in us to want to love us, and therefore he loved us so that we could love him back. And haven't we spent much of our lives, especially in church, trying to do just that? We come to church because we must show our love because God might get us on Monday. Right? Because if we want God to love us, we have to do certain things to make sure he keeps loving us. For those of us who have spent time away from church for significant portions, haven't we kind of felt that? Like, you know what, I should go to church because I really want God to be a part of my life or a part of my children's lives. I really should read my Bible because, it's God's Word. There's got to be some good something in there good for me now. I won't read the Old Testament because that's just kind of weird, but I'll read a psalm maybe. I'll read things about Jesus, the comfortable things. He talks about blessing me. Or certain parts of Paul where he's not talking about how I deserve death. It's like 3 verses, I think. We continually have this concept of God that he is wanting from us before he's ready to pour his love on us. And Christmas stands in stark contrast to what we want God to be. Because we honestly like a God that we can put in our debt. We like a God that if we build up enough good deeds, we can do some bad ones and he's not going to zap us. We don't want a God, often, if we are honest with ourselves, we don't want a God who is never in our debt. We don't want a God that we can't work towards his love or for his love. We want that achievement for it because that's how we felt like we've had to do it with people. Right? Many of us, we grew up in homes where, whether it was the parents' fault or not, we felt like we owed it to our families to love them. And in order to receive love, we had to do even above and beyond. We haven't known a love like the love that Christ has come except for when Christ has flowed through his people to us, and then we didn't know what to do with it. It felt weird. It felt awkward. We still felt like we needed to owe somebody something. We didn't necessarily want to give too much. We wanted to owe them something. Right, don't you ever feel that pull in you when somebody gives you something for no reason? They just want to help. You're like, no, I'll pay you back. No, you don't have to. No, I'll pay you back, please. Right? You ever felt that? If you grew up in the South, you definitely have felt that at some point. And maybe you've gotten to the point where you reject it all out. But if you've lived in the South, you have felt that Southern hospitality guilt trip, And good grief, you get in certain circles and it gets really intense, where like you can't even return something that belongs to somebody else without giving like 3 or 4 things with it. Right? You have to spend all day baking just to return a dish that you had to wash too. My gosh, what have we done to ourselves? Don't we feel that? Don't we feel that love must be, in order for it to be love, it must be always that not only are we giving, but we're taking? And that's what love really means. You do for me, and I'll do for you, but if you stop doing for me, I'm going to stop doing for you. Christ coming to earth is a picture that love was never meant to be that way. Why? Because God is love. And God's love, He has never needed from you. He doesn't need your obedience. He doesn't need your church attendance. He doesn't need your money. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need anything. So why do you keep trying to earn Him? Why do you keep trying to make up things to do so that He'll love you? Christ came to show you that not only do you not have to do anything positive, you can be doing the negative, and He will still find you to show you His love. See, Jesus says later on, John 15, verse 12. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Brothers and sisters, pay attention. God has never called you to love like the world loves. It's not godly. You are called to love as you have been loved. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. What has He commanded? That you love one another as you've been loved. Verse 15, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Listen to verse 16. If you need to put it on a coffee cup, write it on your mirror, whatever it is that you do, put it on a t-shirt. We'll make t-shirts of it. You did not choose me. Now, pay attention to who Jesus is talking to. Okay, because this applies to every Christian, absolutely. But He's talking to His disciples that whenever Jesus said, follow me, they said, yeah, okay. And not only that, they were kind of hanging around before that anyway, because John said, this is the guy. So like, okay, this is the guy we must follow now. And yet Jesus comes to them and He says, here at the end of His ministry, He said, He wants to finally get it through to them. I'm about to show you the greatest picture of my love in the cross. But before I go, you need to know you didn't choose me. You weren't really looking for me. You didn't really want me. I chose you. And if you're wired kind of like I am, you're like, why? And let me help you with something. If that's kind of your tendency, whenever you hear things like this, that God would choose you for no other reason than He chose you, stop asking the question. And just as hard as it is for your heart to embrace, just hold tightly to the fact that He has. Because I don't know why God chose me, and I've been asking for decades. I don't know why. There are some days I feel that deeper in my soul than I do on other days. But what I must always land on, and I will encourage you to land on, is don't ask why, just receive His word to you. You did not choose Him. He chose you. And what peace and joy come with knowing that the God of the universe, who knows every little bit of your heart that you try to hide, came for you. He came for you. Stop telling Him that you weren't worth it. Because you were. Because for the joy of your coming to Him, of Him being able to choose you, for that joy He endured the cross. He despised the shame of it. Didn't care one iota what people thought of Him when He went to that cross. Why? Because He got you to the glory of the Father. We hated Him. When we were lost in our sin, when we were loving our darkness, He came, He died, and He chose us. That's the gospel. That's why we celebrate at Christmas, because the babe that came and was born in the manger came to choose us, to love us when we were not worthy of that love. And brothers and sisters, I'm going to tell you, we still can't be worthy of it. You could be perfect from now till the end of your days, and you're still not going to be worthy of this love. Because we all have something, right? More than something. But we've all, in our past, we've hated God. We've loved the darkness. We have rebelled against Him. All of us. Every single one. You and me. We are kindred spirits as siblings in the family of God. And we have received this love. Not because we earned it. None of us. Because He chose us. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And not only that, but He appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask of the Father in my name, He may give it to you. Now, the fruit comes from as we love Him and as we give love. Let me tell you what shifts in the heart of human beings whenever we stop pursuing things we want and we start pursuing love. Our prayer life changes. We are no longer concerned when Christ's love is in view, when we're resting in the hope we have in Him, when our joy is secure in Him, when our heart is abiding in the peace that only He provides. our prayer life changes because we stop asking for the stupid stuff. Okay? We stop asking for the stuff that really comes from a heart that is coveting. That feels like it doesn't have enough with just Jesus. But my life would be so much better if I had all this other stuff. Solomon's going to tell you, no, it wouldn't. I don't care who you are in the church. You didn't have what Solomon had. You know, Solomon didn't hire the band to come and play for a couple nights. He bought the band, bought the label. He owned them, right? You know, he didn't go and just plant a garden. He planted forests. Okay, this is another level of stuff. But all of that stuff, Solomon says, it's the point of Ecclesiastes, a lot of Proverbs. It all meant nothing. Because it can't buy you love. It can't get you to God. When our hearts are focused on both accepting and receiving the love of Christ as He's given it, instead of trying to make it something else where it works for us, and then giving that love away, our prayer life changes because we're not so concerned with having the brand new stuff. We are concerned about, am I obedient? Am I obedient? And guys, I'm going to tell you, this love is hard for us. Okay? Because see, where Christ never gets tired for all eternity of showering His love and grace upon us, we do, don't we? If you've been married for any stretch of time, you do get tired of being the only one giving, right? Because that's what we tell ourselves. It may not actually be true, but definitely that's what we tell ourselves. I'm the only one who does any work around here. You ever said that about yourself? While the other one's going off to work, you're the only one. Right, yeah. But isn't that our human heart that we have to fight? Right? If you're a parent in here or you're around children, don't we have to fight the urge to keep loving them? Instead of just turning on the TV so they'll just be quiet for just a minute. Instead of just sending them away, just get away from me. You've never said that, have you, as a parent, right? Never done that before, have you? Just imagine, just said the prayer, Lord, just make them mute for just 1 hour. We get tired of giving love as we've received it. And there are two problems with that. One, we wander into disobedience and then no longer loving as we've been loved. And the second thing is we begin to view God that way. And that's how He sees us. And we go back into the reciprocation. Believing that God needs something from He needs us to just be quiet for a little bit. He needs us to just be better behaved. He needs us to do this or do that. And then He can love us. And then He can stand us again, right? This love we have received never runs out. Never gets tired. Never expires. It doesn't take a vacation. It doesn't need a break. And that is how we are supposed to love one another. Now, I want to be clear here, because I am not saying that in this idea of love that we've talked about and that we encompass, that somehow that means that trust or even intimate fellowship must continually be maintained. Because don't we have pictures in our mind of what love should be? Love should be best friends, always want to be together. That's what we see in movies. That's what we dream about. What we want to go back to, the time that we had all these friends that loved us. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. There are going to be people that you need to put boundaries in your life on. But those boundaries don't stop our love. There is a way to love that is actually loving to them. Because loving someone does not mean that they get their way all the time. Loving someone is not making sure that they're happy all the time. If it was, God is not very loving, is He? I don't know about you, but God has often told me, no. No. Stop it. Don't touch that again. Sometimes our love for others is doing that as God has done that for us. Certainly if you're a parent, that's how you are to love your children. We have to tell them no. Because God is going to, in their life, tell them no. And I'm going to tell you this, folks. God is far more concerned about their little psyches than you are. It is loving when we communicate by our words and by our actions at times that there are boundaries to how we care for one another, how we love one another, how we receive love from one another. Christ did not allow everyone to follow him. Remember the demon-possessed man in the tombs. Christ told him, don't follow me. Imagine that. Wouldn't you think that, Jesus is going to be loving to everybody, right? Accepting everyone? Everybody come along. Except the demon-possessed guy. Jesus wasn't being cold to him. Jesus wasn't being uncaring or unfeeling. There were times that Jesus said, no, there's a boundary here. Go home and tell people what I've done for you. Now, just for a second, I don't want to spend too much time here because we have other things to do, but just for a second, imagine what that would have meant for this man. He's just spent potentially years, maybe, running naked through the tombs, possessed by demons. And he's supposed to go home after that? You can only imagine what kind of home might have been left for him. The people that he's going back to were afraid of Jesus. What must they have thought of this man who had terrorized their community for so long, now walking in his right mind and coming back? In my mind, in my personality, that would have been far more difficult than just leaving everything behind and going with Jesus. Far harder, far more emotionally taxing, far more difficult than just getting to sail off with Jesus. Starting over where nobody knew me, or knew what I was. Jesus put a boundary around this man and said, no, you don't come with me. Go back. You tell them That's why love, as we're supposed to love, can be really hard for us. Because there are sometimes we make boundaries that aren't out of love. Right? Sometimes we don't make boundaries because we call that love. This love is hard, which is why before this, Christ has also said, you need to abide in me, abide in my word, abide in my love. If we're not doing those things, we will love poorly. Because if we don't understand how God has loved us throughout history and time as He's revealed in His Word, we will have a hard time replicating that to anybody else. We won't, if we don't know God's love in here, which is what we give from, we won't have God's love to give. We'll have something else to give. It may look like love, and it may sound like love to the world, but it's not really love. 1 John. John continues to help us. 1 John chapter 4, starting in verse 7. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. John is making a distinction. There is a specific kind of love that is Christian, and you can't get it anywhere else. This love that John is describing, and it's not bound to a certain Greek word or anything else. It is the love that he has been building all the way through chapter 1, 2, and 3. But this love that John is describing is a unique Christian, God-saturated love that only exists in the people of God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent His only Son into the world. This is what we celebrate at Christmas. So that we might live through Him. And this is love, not that we have loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Propitiation meaning He bore the wrath that we deserve. Verse 11. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. God so loved us. God has so loved you. If you are His, He has so loved you. He has sent His Son to choose you, to make you part of His family, to bring you into the light. Why? Because our sinful things that we hid in the darkness don't matter anymore, because they've been paid for on the cross. God has so loved you. Now you go in love. Brothers and sisters, this is so much what is lacking, especially in American Christianity. And I speak to American Christianity because where we are. We can speak to it in every other place in the world as well. We have a hard time loving one another well. That's why we don't evangelize. That's why we don't talk about the gospel. That's why we don't move out of our comforts many times. Because this love is work. This love calls us out of our daily routine and scenarios. This calls us out of me time or isolated family time. This calls us out. Again, not that we shouldn't just love our churches, not that we shouldn't love our families, not that we shouldn't love the people that we automatically have contact with, but brothers and sisters, if we understand this love rightly, the people who love darkness will keep loving darkness into hell. will never on their own turn. You are called to love them. And by that love, show them Christ. Now, they may still reject you, but isn't that the love that we've received? Isn't that the love that Christ gave? Our love is not determined by whether they love us back. Ever. We just keep showing up and keep loving even when they don't love us back. Listen, I'm a teacher. I deal with this every day. Nobody loves a teacher when homework is due. Nobody. They don't like the love that a teacher gives. And it's hard some days to walk into that classroom knowing that I'm not going to receive love from some of my students. I wake up some mornings knowing I'm not going to receive the love that I want from my children today. They're sinners. They are not going to love some of the boundaries that I put for them, for their safety and for their good. There are going to be times I make mistakes in the boundaries that I make. In the name of love. But really probably for my own comfort or ease. Every day we are pressed, tempted to, which way are we going to choose? Love as we have been loved, or are we going to choose the love of the darkness? Christ came to show us a better way. He came to show us the love of the Father, the love of grace, eternal love, never changes, never fades. And in that love, brother and sister, He chose you. And that will never change. But when He chose you to be an instrument of His love to everyone around you. Not just the people you like, not just the people it's easy to get around. Anyone and everyone. Brothers and sisters, planted a church here 5 years ago because we wanted to see God's love in Cleburne. We planted a church to do that because that's what we are supposed to be. God's love to Cleburne. And how we love one another, but especially in how we love those who aren't here yet. The question that I continually feel pressed upon my heart is, what am I doing to love someone else today? And for the days that I get at home on my vacation, guess what that means? Not only do I have to consider that for the people that I'm stuck in that house with, no matter what they may be doing, I have to choose to love them there. But I also then have to think, how am I going to get to somebody else? How am I going to get to that neighbor that I know is lost? How am I going to get to that neighbor that I haven't met yet? How am I going to show the love of Christ to the person who's checking out my groceries and going extremely slow for this time of year. Obviously doesn't know what my schedule is and how important I am. How am I going to show Christ's love to the person who didn't use their blinker and obviously deserves God's righteous wrath? How are you, Christian, who have been so loved by God, how are you going to show His love today, this week, this season? If something pops into your mind that feels uncomfortable, you might be on the right track. Pray and consider, but you might be on the right track. Something that inconveniences your sensibilities, invades where the boundaries used to be when you were walking in your love for yourself. It might just be where God's calling. I'm not saying 100%, I'm not trying to speak that over you like that's what you got to go do. But what I am saying is that generally is where He calls us. When He calls us to love others. It's generally outside of our norm. Because our tendency is to love me instead of loving you. My tendency is to love you so long as you're giving to me. So what does it look like for us not only to love one another, do that well, but to love those outside who have not yet felt, experienced, received the love that we have been shown? That is what Christ came to give to us so that we could give that away. So let us be praying as a body about how God may use us to give His love to others in the days ahead. I just want to give you just a few moments to commune with God. I would challenge you. It's a risky prayer. I challenge you to pray, Lord, show me my heart. And where I am holding on to the old way of doing love. Then ask Him to show you. Maybe not today, maybe not in this very moment, but ask Him to show you how you can be moving to give His love to others. That they may come to know Him, experience His love as you have. Go to the Lord now.